Hey guys, I'm here to do my last and final video with Clooney to talk about off-leash reliability and how to use the e-collar when off-leash. You know, the way my camera is set up, you might not get to see everything, but I tried to set up as best I could. The first thing I do with Clooney, it's kind of like Hootie. I like to part his hair and make sure that those prongs are touching his skin because he's got real thick hair too. And sometimes it's like your dogs don't feel it. I just want you guys to know that Clooney's e-collar numbers are much more challenging, and you're gonna have to be willing to go up much higher and probably even much faster on the e-collar than you do with Hootie. Clooney doesn't really, you know, he can escalate really quickly, so it's always kind of surprising how he would jump from like a 3 on the e-collar to like a 35 or 40 in a matter of seconds. And so we might have to set up scenarios so I can help you distinguish when to go up quickly and when his numbers will stay lower. So, but for starters, I got my speaker box set up. You'll be able to hear the work that I'm doing. I'm just gonna do all the commands that I've taught you. It's going to be as if this is an electronic leash, so I am going to be using this in all places where I would give him a command and the leash pressure would enter the picture. I've never done this with him before, so this is like a rough, you know, this is going to be like how it might look a little bit more at your house when you're starting him out for the first time. Because when they're the first time they're off leash, they test the boundaries a lot more. So they realize the leash isn't on and they think, okay, game on. What can I get away with? How can I get back to my old tendencies? And when that electronic e-collar turns on, they start to realize that they have an electronic leash. But at first, that doesn't mean they're not going to test the boundaries. So I'm just going to do some repetitions. Let's go. So right now, he's not getting off place. He's right underneath the camera right now. On place. He's not getting off. So I'm just going to go up. And the longer it takes for him to respond, the faster I'm going to go up because I know that he is just being stubborn. So that means 30. Let's go, Clooney. And that was a 42. Now I actually immediately went back down to a 7. He's between a 3 and an 8 when he's working in a solid mood. So when he's got a willingness to listen, his numbers are between a 3 and an 8. And you'll see that it works really, really well because, like I just said, let's go. And I had to really crank my e-collar dial in order to get that to happen. If I say let's go and he willingly gets off, then he's going to be at a lower number. So basically this guy, the more defiant he comes off, the higher you have to go up, and I go up pretty quickly. I don't do gradual stuff with him because he's super stubborn and he needs a drastic contrast in numbers in order to convince his brain to move in the direction I need it to. for you, with you, that it doesn't matter what dog it is, it's the same conversation depending. It doesn't matter if I have to go up higher on the e-collar, sit, or what. My e-collar training is the same with every dog. And that is, the e-collar stimulation is not going to turn off until I get your commitment. So if you go back to the beginning of this video, he would not get off the place board and come with me, so I held the e-collar stimulation down until he got off his place board and started to head my way. Now what I'm not doing is holding my e-collar down until he gets to me, right? So if I think about this being an electronic leash, if I held the e-collar button down until he came all the way to me, that would be the equivalent of me dragging him over to me in constant leash pressure. I'm just reeling it in with a ton of pressure and I'm dragging him in. That's the equivalent of the e-collar representing the leash, which is how I train the dogs. So instead, what we want to see is, okay, the dog isn't listening, I'm going to go up until I catch, I cue them into me, and then at that point, I am going to wait until I see that commitment from them, and then I'll release the e-collar. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say I am Hootie, and you're asking Hootie to come when called. You need to hold that button down until you see this. I'm heading right to you. Right? Do not hold the button down and go beep, beep, all the way until he comes to you. All you need to see is the commitment. So it goes beep, off. He's committed. Now let's say Hootie decides to go, yeah, you turned the e-collar off, so I'd really like to just go over here and sniff instead of actually coming all the way into your personal space. Then you go beep and hold it down again until you saw that commitment, and then you would let off as he's coming to you. So it's pressure, release, pressure, release, pressure, release. Pressure turns on when I'm trying to communicate. It releases when you commit to listening, and it's going to turn back on if you blow me off. Pressure, release, pressure, release. Let's go. I'm on a 3 with him right now. Hey, go ahead, bud. Go ahead. Go ahead. I want to see if I can get him to lock onto a smell or something so I can kind of put that explanation into motion here. Go ahead, bud. Go ahead. Go ahead. He's the hardest to call when he is sniffing something, like where his nose is in the ground, like right now. So I turned it off quickly because he immediately started committing. Sit. Good. So this is good because he's actually being extremely responsive. Other than that very first let's go, everything's real quick. And on a 3, so low numbers. But you have to pair it with their behavior. So he's responding quickly, so the e-collar doesn't need to stay on very much. But if he were to get defiant, like in that first part of the video, I need to make sure that I'm holding that pressure down until I get that response. Good. Now, just because he's on a 3 for me does not mean he's going to be on a 3 for you. And this is the same with Hootie. It's about how they're responding to the collar, right? So it's not about the number on the screen at all. It's about the dog's responsiveness to the stimulation. command with the e-collar every time. So, you know, there are lots of times when my clients will only use the e-collar when they're not listening. That is not how I train the dog. So that might end up becoming a phase of training later on, but right now what I want them to feel and hear is that this pressure and my voice are tied with one another, so that the e-collar stimulation has lots of context. That touch means my mom, that touch means my dad. Right now, that touch means me. So it's not a correction collar, it's a communication device. I am using it directionally. This guy has actually never even yelped on the bark collar, or the biggest indicator that he's trying to blow me off or he's irritated is if he itches it. He tries to itch it off just like Hootie. A lot of dogs do. It's really common. Let's go. But that's not a sign of the e-collar being too high. That's just him not wanting it on his neck. All right? So this is not, he's never felt a negative association with this e-collar before, ever. So you have to kind of get over that preconceived notion of what an electronic collar represents to a dog and start pairing your voice with that touch, so that you're empowering your voice is what you're doing. That voice is so powerful that even across the yard you can touch your dog with it, you know. And when you empower your voice, let's go, you're going to be able to get it off of them faster. And I'm never in a hurry to get the e-collar off. That's just not, that's not my place. I'm not in a hurry to take away tools that grant me very good control over any dog. So for me, it's not about how fast can I get off the tool. I just really want a dog that's well trained. But you can become reliant on a tool for the rest of their lives if used inappropriately. So my advice to you in the layering of every command with every form of stimulation that you press is actually to empower your voice, so that your dogs see that touch and your voice are related. It empowers you that you always get the follow through. So when you say come, you always make it happen. And then what will end up happening down the road is that empowerment of your voice. You'll start to see a lot of these commands don't require the e-collar anymore. And regardless of whether they do now, you still need to do the layering, because this e-collar means my voice. And so your job in the next several weeks is to pair it to the point where it means your voice. Let's go. Moments as I thought I would. Now the e-collar, I've said this before, but it helps to have reminders and video when he sees a dog or a person, honestly, I almost think the sight of a person is more stimulating to Clooney than a dog. Place? And I know this, it makes a lot of sense because in our consults you told me that when he goes to the dog park, really all he wants to do is place. I'm going to hold this down. What to do when they break place and how to handle going up on your e-collar. That was a 41. Right, so low, he's actually pretty low intensity. That conversation to me was, I don't want to stay on my place board. You know, I'm on a 3, things are working out just fine. I don't want to stay on the place board. I say go back to your place. He decides to throw a fit, try to itch his e-collar off in defiance. I don't want to go to my place board. Tough kitties, get on your place board. And I went up relatively quickly on my dial. I did that cadence tap, tap, tap approach so I could go up at my collar at the same time. And you know, I do it one-handed, so you're gonna be looking more like this, but I'm gonna go back down to a 1 here so he can't feel this. This is not a good way to do e-collar training, where you go, damn it, what number? Maybe this is something you have to do with Hootie because his numbers are lower, but even with Hootie, you gotta get better at that dial and be quicker because all that time where the e-collar isn't on is allowing the dog moments of time to continue with their blow off. So this gives me more access to ensure that that pressure stays on. So, what you might do, I'm going to stay on a 1, because he can't feel a 1. So, I would just do this cadence approach, tap, 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 so that you can continue to go up quickly on your collar with your left hand while you're tapping. And with this guy, he has an extremely high pain tolerance. I don't want you shocking him, obviously. I would like the number to be smooth. But if you go up a little bit too high, this guy barely notices it. He is surprisingly very stoic with the e-collar. Now, when we're referring to a barometer for the brain, this is a great example of what I mean. When he is willing and mellow, his numbers are super low, 3 to 8, super low. When he is stimulated by something like a stranger or a dog, or a smell on the ground, his numbers will naturally increase. That's just that prey drive is kicking in and the adrenaline is kicking in, so the brain is naturally not going to feel a lower form of touch. The touch needs to be a bit higher. Now that doesn't mean you're correcting them. That actually just means you're finding the number that works in that particular moment. So it'll look very similar to the 3, but it might be a 40, and that's okay, because that's the number he needed in order to feel it and register that you're talking to him. Now in that case, that wasn't stimulus, that was defiance. That was, I'm not interested in your agenda. And even though he's outwardly pretty much blowing me off, I am still trying to go up at a fair rate so that I'm still directing him into the position I need him to be, versus going up so high that I'm correcting him. Now I've got a client pulling up, picking up a dog, so this could get a little bit more challenging. Because he usually barks at that kind of stuff. So behind the camera, a dog just walked by the fence line and I have a client that just pulled up in their car. I'm going to let him get a look at this and give him an opportunity to make a choice here. Good choice. Now there was no command with that, right? I'm trying to see, can Clooney come off of this form of stimulation that usually really gets him aggravated and choose to be with his handler instead of guarding my crappie? I'm going to do a recall. See, now he's not choosing me. Here, I went up to a 5. So I do go up pretty quickly with him. He knows the Ecollar real well, and he escalates quickly. So I feel like I hold my remote collar down for a few seconds, and if I don't get a response, I start going up on the collar. And I'm very proud to see him avoiding this confrontation that he would definitely want to get himself into. Even in a week ago, he would have wanted to been in the middle of that, barking at that. So good job, buddy. Good job. And I'm saying, if this is so upsetting to you, why don't you come over here and hang out with me and I'll take care of it. You know, that's kind of the conversation I think of it as. And that are 3 safe places. Crate when you're gone, place when you're home, here when you're out in the world. Now he's concerned about that again. Good job, buddy. So what I'm kind of saying to him is, I know that you have a tendency to feel like you need to guard, but if you just come over here with me, I can take care of the situation. You don't have to worry about that. Good job, dude. I wanted to touch on something. 23 minutes. Before the client pulled up, you saw me kind of grab onto Hootie's collar and move him around on the place board. These place boards create, when they sit, they're smack dab in the middle of them, the brain naturally calms down. That's actually one of the reasons why we use them, because that sinking effect of the place board is a soothing technique. Well, he likes to put his butt on the bar so that his brain can stay in that heightened state. You know, he's like, it's his way of being like, I don't want to let go of this tension that I feel and this concern that I feel. I want to stay on the edge. So what I did is I just moved him into the center of the place board so that his butt would sink more and he would calm down. So that's why I did that on place. Now, I think I pretty much went over everything. I just wanted to give you guys some examples of, you know, those couple moments where I'm holding the e-collar down and I'm going up on my numbers until I get what I want. I know this is a hard technique. I know the e-collar is not simple and you guys are going to get it, but you need to continue to reference this video if you're confused, because I have seen lots of people actually unravel my e-collar training by doing a couple different things. One is just doing a tap, just every time they give a command, whether the dog's responding or not, whether the number's working or not, they just give a tap. And then the moment the dog doesn't listen, they either give up because it doesn't work, or they add a bunch of leash pressure to compensate. That's not what I want. What I want is no leash pressure if possible, minimal if necessary, and that you're going up with this guy relatively swiftly on the e-collar until you find a number that gets him to respond, and that e-collar needs to remain on. The other thing that I see with my e-collar a lot is, you know, there's the tap, but then there's I keep forgetting to press the button, and that's going to actually make it harder for you to, one, learn the e-collar, and two, get the dog to hear your voice and to feel that empowerment that I'm trying to accomplish for you two. So that layering needs to happen for a while so that your dogs start to tune into you better. And then the other thing that I see very frequently is that people cap out at a number. They say, that's it, that's as high as I'm willing to go, I'm uncomfortable beyond that point. And so the dog actually learns a threshold at which the e-collar will go, and they will eventually learn to break through that threshold. Now Hootie is more sensitive, so he's less likely to find that threshold, that he's not going to go up nearly as high. This guy doesn't have he has a very, very high pain tolerance. He doesn't have a lot of feeling because of how anxious he is. He doesn't have as much feeling as Hootie in his body. That comes from a lot of adrenaline too. And so if you're like, okay, I'm never going to go up above a 40, I just refuse to, he will figure that out, and he will learn to blow through the e-collar when he feels like it. This goes up to 100. Now, I really don't want to shock the dogs. I'm less inclined to do that in any situation, except for the 1% chance that he might decide to blow through it to the point where he's taking off and he goes, I don't care about the 40, I felt it before, and screw you guys. And at that point, I'm actually just going to go ahead and crank my dial and make sure that I get that response, whether it's too high or not. So we do have to keep in mind that there are oh shit moments that do require us to follow through to the point where we might actually create a little bit of discomfort with the dog. I don't want that. I want to avoid that at all costs. If you go slow and provide tons of direction, you should more than likely never reach that point. But because it is a possibility, it's important for you guys to know that you have to make sure you follow through and go up as high as you need to get what you want every single time, so the dog does not learn to manipulate the tool. So that's my spiel on the e-collar. Clooney's doing real well. I look forward to working with you guys tomorrow, and I hope you're doing well.